suddenly I sorted it out pretty good, and it's left me in a pretty defensible position. I've already identified it, and I didn't reveal that I had lost the identification. You know, there's nothing worse than putting yourself up to the vote of the dancers. You know, I mean, you see people that, okay, where's your corner? Who's your corner? Who is this? And da-da-da-da. You know, you don't ask because you lose control and they turn on you like that. What you need to be able to do is use methods of identification. And if you keep cool, there are very simple ways to do it. You know, I thought, well, maybe runs or trades. No, you turn back. It's a real easy call. And what's more, it reveals things right away for you. Yeah. Gently. Yeah, it's been done in places before, that type of thing. Yeah. Anyway, but that's one way of sorting things, and it's a square that has a predominance of one sex in it is going to be more and more a function that we see, and particularly in specialty areas. You know, teens particularly, you see lots and lots of that occasion, and you can't, in any single situation, you can't always assure yourselves of even distribution. And so a way to quickly identify is use those little tricks. You guys have been up an awful long time. Would you like to take a break? Yeah, sure. No, I'm fine. Anyway, we saw how we analyzed split circulate. We saw when we analyzed quarter through as an option, or swing through, or spin chain through. And we analyzed it for different purposes. We analyzed it for resolving the square. We analyzed it for maneuvering the square. We analyzed it for what it does to the square in and of itself. Those three thrusts can really help you make you in control of the dance, as opposed to the dancer in control of the dance. And when you're in control of the dance, you can really do a wide variety of things from the microphone that make things very entertaining. Now, that doesn't remove the singing calls from the dance. It doesn't remove your dynamic personality from the dance. All those are factors there too, plus the sociability of the club. And as it was pointed out a long time to me ago by my colleague mentor, you know, when I have 20 squares one night and 5 squares the next night and then 20 squares the next night, it's apparently not me for the 5 square group. So you don't have control of everything, but you do have a lot. You've got 200 watts in this, and it is very, very powerful. And when this is something you need to realize both in the course of calling and controlling a dance and teaching, is how powerful you appear. You really are a very remote individual. Everybody goes down and tries to be friends and maneuver around the club and that type of thing and work with the people. But the persona that they perceive behind the microphone and becomes larger than life. And you have to be in control up there, controlled to the point where you can't always indulge your temper and frustrations and things along that line. You also have to realize that, in particular, with beginner dancers and even with mainstream graduate dancers, is that you have to make them realize that you are open to communication. Particularly for the new dancer who is looking to you as a very remote father figure, you have to make them realize that, yes, they can talk to you, that no question is too stupid, that no question is dumb, that you have the right to ask those kind of questions. There's a time and a place for it. In the course of setting up lessons, make things available. Make sure that on the breaks that you're available to do things. That, you know, when I set up my lesson groups at different levels, you know, I set down the ground rules for that. I tell them how the things are going to be structured, when the review tip is, and so forth. That, for instance, if you missed the week before, then it's on your head, not mine, but on your head to be responsible that you're up for the review tip. And if the computer card doesn't assign you for the review tip, then you find somebody to swap places with, or point it out to me, and I'll give you a hand at that point. But I'm not going to try to clean up everything after you. But you got to be responsible for knowing that you weren't there that week and need the review tip in particular. But setting up those kind of ground rules ahead of time, I also set up the ground rules of that you've got the right to ask questions. Particularly, first off, if you find it confusing during the teach, raise your hand, and I'll take the question from the floor when I feel like there's a space to take it. If I'm in the middle of talking about something, then I'll want you to hold the question. But realize that it's your right to ask the question from the floor, that it's not a challenge to you, it's that they don't understand and they need more help. You're not getting through, and you got a good response when they're feeling free enough to raise their hand for a question. Even more importantly, if it wasn't successful and you need some personal help, that's what the break time's for. And that's when I'm available to get down there off the stage, and I'll give you every individual attention possible. But you've got to ask me. I don't know that you don't know until you volunteer that. And so sometimes I can read the puzzled look on the face and the queried look in the eye, but there's other times I can't. And if you don't open up that line of communication, particularly to the beginner dancer, they're never going to use it. And that's the thing that we have to make sure that to realize that we look very inaccessible up here, very omnipotent, and very scary. And that to give some kind of relationship with these people, we need to make sure that they know they can talk to us, they can ask questions, and we got to be prepared to approach it non-hostilely, no matter how provoked. Bless you. 2 more and you're out. Anyway, I picked it up from around that instructor, so it's his fault. Anyway, and to realize that you're accessible, that they can ask you questions, and then you got a chance to get some honest feedback going. But you also got to be prepared that sometimes you're going to find somebody very, very hostile. And I'm not a type of personality that handles hostility coming at me. I've been in too much competitive debate and everything else, and I'm usually more inclined to go for their throat. And I have learned, I've broken myself of it, and I've actually gotten to the point where I bite my tongue back, and I take it all and decline and inside. Now, I don't let them walk all over me, but I'll say that I disagree, and I'll walk away and do whatever I can do. The interesting thing is that I had a situation like that where somebody came up and really complained and everything else, and finally I just simply said, well, ma'am, I beg to differ, and I walked away. Now, I wasn't really reasonable to be around for the next 10 minutes or so, and there's a hole in the wall somewhere that I kicked in. But what was interesting was the very next day she came up to me and apologized. Now, that probably wouldn't happen if I chewed her head off at that point in time. But I think that goes to show that if you realize the responsibility behind the microphone and start to try to open lines of communication, that many times it's their frustration with the situation they didn't understand or something else that happened in the square, and it comes out towards you. Well, we get the big bucks, we get paid to do this, and we have a professional responsibility. Now, somewhere along the line, you also draw the line so that it doesn't violate across that. I mean, there is too far to go at times, and there are times you need to stand up for your rights. But overall, we need to be able to learn to communicate and reason with our people. And that is so important with the beginning dancer, to open up that line of communication, is that here is somebody that's an entertainer, just like an entertainer they went to the nightclub and listened to, or a comedian or whatever. But it's important that there's a communication developed between the two of you, because you're a teacher as well as an entertainer, and the teacher needs the communication on the floor. And I think that's probably one of the most important things and the hardest things for us to learn, is to communicate with our dancers so that we can honestly do a really good job of teaching them. That's basically all I have. Yeah. Oh yeah, I certainly think so. I think that how you kid with them and how you may tease them about mistakes, and everybody in every group has somebody they know that it doesn't matter how much you kid them and jostle them, and they're the type that laugh it off, and so you can use them as the everyman on the floor, that you kid him, and it takes the onus off the other people that may not take the kidding, that have the sensitive personalities or the fragile personalities. But here's Bud you can pick on, and everybody gets a big laugh out of it, and it relaxes. You know, it's interesting when you watch a beginning caller, when he's allowed to call a guest tip at the club, and so he's calling the guest tip, and he's very, very formal and very, very rigid, And the voice is way up here like this because everything is tensed and it's tight. And what happens is, inevitably, is that a square will make a mistake. And it's almost as if he's the lifeguard on the side and sees somebody fall in the water and ignores what's going on and dives in the water after them. What happens is that suddenly, going after them to help them out, his voice drops, and there's a relaxation creeps in because he's been distracted enough by what went on there that when he's down there helping them out, that suddenly his voice relaxes, the adrenaline takes over, and things can happen well for him. And because he stopped being the statue up here that was spouting things off and started being a real persona behind the microphone and started relating with the people. And so there's times that I have preset jokes and routines that I know lend themselves to more humor. And I set that up that way because it allows me, even with the floor of strangers, to kid and jostle with them in a gentle way, and then establish, and when I get them to relax, I can do things with them. Tight dancers, I can't get to dance. They're too rigid, they don't flow well, they jerk from position to position. I get them to relax, and I can do wonders with them. Then they start listening to me, they can trust me. I can do things with them there. I can't do things when they're afraid of me, but I can do things when they're relaxed with me. And so all of us are not necessarily the greatest born entertainers in the world. We have to learn how to do that. One of the ways we learn how to do that is finding ways that make us look natural and sound natural. And if it make us look and sound natural on the outside, maybe in here we'll start to believe it. And then we relax. And then this just becomes an ongoing process. It's the good vicious circle that starts building on its own momentum. But we have to start it some way. We found ways to kickstart it for us, to make us sound good, to make us sound like people that come across very friendly and competent and strong, and they trust us and can do more. I guess one of the best examples I ever saw was we had a challenge group in Louisville, and one dance they had Deuce Williams in, and Deuce was just one of the challenge callers, and the course was always very hard, very intricate, and these people couldn't square through to him because they were always looking for the trap. I mean, it had to be something there that was even stranger and weirder or whatever. 2 weeks later, Bob Fisk comes in, and Bob is just as competent a challenge caller, but he's also a festival caller that sings and has a great personality and works the floor around and so forth. And dancing things they normally couldn't dance at all, but they trusted Bob. This was sweet old Bob, and Bob just gets us through it and dances really nice. And there was no notable change in the ability of those dancers from the previous 2 weeks to that time period. It was in their trust of the caller and trust of the situation. They relaxed to him. And relaxed dancers can dance and perform very well. Uptight dancers can't do anything. And that's really the reality. And not only is it the reality for experienced dancers, it's even more of a reality for beginning dancers. Look at them when they're at your home group when you're teaching them, and then look at them at their first class dance somewhere. You're lucky if they still retain circle left and right. And suddenly circle left to right to a different voice. and it's a new experience for them. And to the degree that you get them to relax, they can dance very well. When they find out that they can handle these situations, there's nothing to be nervous about, then they dance and perform well. Make them uptight, and they won't do anything. And you'll lose them because they'll find out this is not such a positive experience. At least the bowling ball doesn't strike me back when I go bowl. So. Yes. And so they're distracted. They keep worrying about their being cold and this and that, and not ignoring it, and they're so distracted. They're not, yeah. But also I find that lighting is an effect. I have a hall in the Maryland area that I utilize. It's a campground conference center. It's gorgeous wood floor, and it has fluorescent lights, and it has these spots. And so during the summer, the spots go off totally because they add to the heat, the air conditioning problem. During the winter, I only use half of the fluorescent banks, and I bring these up, and it kind of gives an effect on the floor of light patterns, and it makes a very nice atmosphere. It's not the brightest atmosphere, but it's a very nice atmosphere to dance in. There are other places where I think one of the greatest things that we can do is have tables in the back, that instead of having the chairs plastered against the wall, is have tables to sit around at, which gets people to talk and function with each other. And you see a lot more mixing there than what do you see when you have normally with the chairs plastered against the, you either have people sitting up and they talk to their adjacent neighbor, or you see clumps of people that are standing, neither of which are very comfortable. But you have the tables where they can sit around and talk and function with each other, and suddenly you get a lot of mixing. You know, that was one reason why I thought the convention this weekend worked very well in its different facility. I don't know if you're all familiar with the Canadian Advanced and Challenge Convention. It was originally at the Hamilton Convention Center, and of course it was that kind of situation with the chairs along the side and that type of thing, big cavernous halls. Well, they have a smaller crowd this year. They were in the John D. McDonald School, and what happened in the back, in order to fill up some of the space, they put tables and chairs. And it was a whole different atmosphere. People were mixed around, and you saw more mixing amongst the floor because during breaks they sat down and talked with each other. What a novel concept. And so suddenly there was just a lot more mixing, and just simply the addition of the tables and chairs makes a whole different attitude in the way the dance is done. Mm-hmm. Right. And it creates a dynamic that you no longer have to worry about. You know, you have a dead dance, you want to figure out how to get it raised and so forth, and yet it's these kind of factors that you really have no control of from the microphone, but you can do positive things to help the dance come across well. And it's interesting what little factors like that can have for the dance. Just by providing them a place to be able to socially interact. Well, first thing you got to realize that they isn't they is us, as Pogo would say. Well, unfortunately, I don't want to get into politics situation because there's some personalities involved there and so forth. Basically, what we also got to realize that we've met the enemy and they is us. It's all of us have a responsibility, and it's when we make an environment where we really don't care what other levels do, then that's when you see sloppiness creep in. When you create an environment where you think that other levels have the right to exist and there should be some universal trait going through the calls and consistency so that people can learn the dance well and that they don't have to learn a different thing when they want to go on or whatever they do, then I think that creates an environment where those kind of things don't happen. In any people situation, you're going to see it's something that's constantly in flux. It takes steps forward and it takes steps backwards. And this was a Kincaid occasion that we took a step backwards. The man that put it up for quarterly selection didn't get all the input that he should have and could have gotten, and well, yeah, theoretically, and at the same time he was willing to dismiss it, and his willingness to dismiss it was because he had a bias against the other level, the other activity, and dismissed it as insignificant. And he got quite a detailed response from people that didn't feel like it was something they should dismiss. Whatever it is, there have been more steps to try to cure those kind of situations to keep them from happening again. And you know, part of it is that in establishing rules and guidelines, you don't necessarily, or you're not necessarily able to come up with all the possible scenarios that could happen wrong. And so therefore it's hard to come up with rules ahead of time that totally preempt everything that could possibly go wrong. Oh, right, I understand that. I know what the objection is to that. What I'm saying ahead of time is that you can't sit up and come up with guidelines to hamstring your chairman every time to prevent every possible scenario that you think might happen. you really have to be able to select competent people that you can trust according to their background and information. I think maybe that was a situation where the best possible person for the job wasn't picked, and it more reflected that. Yeah. Yeah, right. And you know what also, we also basically need the trust. We need to trust the rank and file membership of caller. We need to trust the rank and file membership of our callers associations. Most everybody really isn't out for the buck. Most everybody has really got a certain amount of knowledge in what's going on, and even if they don't necessarily dance the next level or dance a bunch of different material, doesn't mean they can't find out things about it. And where they can see inconsistencies there if somebody takes the time to explain it to them. Jack Lasry was probably one of the best people about saying, look, these people are people you should trust, give them a chance to understand the situation and they'll probably vote right. Yeah, exactly. And okay. Well, if okay. Thank you very much. Well, put this part on tape. I mean, this is nice. I've always I was up here doing the seminar before the Canadian National when it was here in Hamilton, and I've been privileged to do two of the clinics at the T&D and this one. Well, I've always enjoyed working with you all. I've always found that there's been a professional approach to the calling here by all the different callers in Canada that I find very refreshing and different from attitude in a number of different places in the States. It's a very high professional attitude, and I appreciate it when I come here to try to talk and work with you. So it's very enjoyable. Thank you. Suddenly, I sorted it out pretty good, and it's left me in a pretty defensible position. I've already identified it, and I didn't reveal that I had lost the identification. There's nothing worse than putting yourself up to the vote of the dancers. I mean, you see people that, okay, where's your corner? Who's your corner? Who is this? And that. You don't ask because you lose control, and they turn on you like that. What you need to be able to do is use methods of identification, and if you keep cool, there are very simple ways to do it. I thought, well, maybe runs or trades. No, you turn back. It's a real easy call. And what's more, it reveals things right away for you. Yeah. Gently. Yeah, it's been done in places before, that type of thing. Yeah. Anyway, but that's one way of sorting things, and it's a square that has a predominance of one sex in it is going to be more and more a function that we see, and particularly in specialty areas. Teens particularly, you see lots and lots of that occasion, and you can't, in any single situation, you can't always assure yourselves of even distribution. And so a way to quickly identify is use those little tricks. You guys have been up an awful long time. Would you like to take a break? Yeah, sure. No, I'm fine. Anyway, we saw how we analyzed split circulate. We saw when we analyzed quarter through as an option, or swing through, or spin chain through, and we analyzed it for different purposes. We analyzed it for resolving the square. We analyzed it for maneuvering the square. We analyzed it for what it does to the square in and of itself. Those three thrusts can really help you make you in control of the dance, as opposed to the dancer in control of the dance. And when you're in control of the dance, you can really do a wide variety of things from the microphone that make things very entertaining. Now, that doesn't remove the singing halls from the dance. It doesn't remove your dynamic personality from the dance. All those are factors there too, plus the sociability of the club. And as it was pointed out a long time to me ago by my colleague mentor, when I have 20 squares one night and 5 squares the next night, and then 20 squares the next